Hello, welcome everyone for yet another exciting session by us, BayOne Solutions. Today, we are talking about strategies for contingent workforce engagement. We have some amazing industry leaders who will also share their strategies, experience, and the gap they see in the industry. So, without further delay, let me introduce everyone to you one by one. First, we have Thomas Tisdale from Magnit. Tom comes with an impressive 30 years of experience in the services industry. He's currently serving as a global director of supplier relations at Magnit, wherein he leads all initiatives with regards to the supply chain and relations globally. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Beth Fenske from Rightsourcing. Beth comes with an extensive experience in healthcare industry. She's currently working as a director of supply relations at Rightsourcing. Beth is known for her unmatched support and leadership in the industry, and she was named 2022's Minority Business Development Leader. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
Next, we have Travis Almy from TRC Talent Solutions. Travis has an illustrious career spanning over 2 decades in the consulting industry. He has consistently championed customer centric strategies, driving transformative growth and innovation. Travis is currently serving as the Chief Growth Officer at TRC Talent Solutions. Welcome, Travis.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not the least, our favorite SVP, HR and Employee Engagement leader, and today's moderator, Sonia said. Sonia has over 2 decades of experience in service industry, and she specializes in people management. Sonia, over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, Tom, Beth, Travis. Nice to see you again. Hope
Sonia, great to
everyone
see
is
you.
doing well. Awesome. So I'm so excited about this event today. We are going to be talking about building stronger connections with our contingent workforce, right? And how critical it is to a company's success into making sure that we do foster these relationships, right? So we are going to delve into the art of these meaningful relationships with the contingent workforce and also uncover some effective measures that ensure alignment, right? As well as mutual benefits for all the stakeholders. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you a few questions and, request you to share your insights. Okay, engagement, employee engagement, fostering connections, right? Words are really powerful. But what does it actually mean? What does employee engagement mean, and how critical it is to any organization's success to have matrices around it? Tom, if I can ask you to share insights about this topic.
Yeah, to me, it's the most important, right? If your workforce is not engaged, they're not aligned, they're not marching to the same drumbeat in the same direction, they're transient. And it's really hard to do in today's workforce because you look at the majority of the workforce now, it's Generation Z and less, and they are not. When I look at my dad, he was company focused. It was all about working for Lockheed Martin, right? I was career focused. It's all about long stays at companies to improve my career. You look at the workers today, it's all about the opportunity at hand, the project at hand. So if you're not engaged, you're not going to stay. And, that's turnover. And we all understand we can't get things done when we just keep turning over the workforce because we don't provide them an engaging work environment. So answer your question, Sonia, it's mission critical. It's, to me, we've got to pay the workers. We got to make sure they have a great environment. We got to make sure they're engaged in a positive framework.
Thank you. Beth, how would you relate it to, more to healthcare industry, or from your experience, what would you say employee engagement or contingent workforce engagement actually mean?
Well, first, I'd like to just build on what Tom said. I absolutely agree with him that an engaged workforce is a workforce that is committed to delivering on the organizational program and project. But the bigger picture that we see, especially in healthcare post-pandemic, is workers want to be individuals. They don't want to be that nurse. They want to be Nurse Nancy, who has 3 kids and 2 dogs. They don't want to be, oh, you're an ER nurse. So mission critical in healthcare specifically actually, from the supplier's perspective, is really creating that relationship and making sure that the employee feels connected, they feel appreciated, and they feel seen. That's going to create that engagement and that loyalty that is so hard to come by in today's environment.
Yes, completely agree. Travis, so we have heard from Tom and Beth, right? How important to have an engaged employee for success of all stakeholders. I would like to ask you a question about measuring this engagement, right? We have heard employee satisfaction survey. So do you think that a satisfied employee is an engaged employee?
Yeah,
And
so
vice versa?
yeah, great question. And so let me first just start by saying thank you everyone being here. I think this is an important topic, especially for those of us that are in the contingent labor business. And to find out there's over 200 people on the call today, that's really amazing to me that people want to hear about this topic, because when I think about it, the first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about employee engagement is how do we become a destination of choice? And so most employers, if you look at most employers, direct employers, if you think about Amazon or Apple, or I'm in Atlanta, so Home Depot, UPS, Coca-Cola are big here. They are destinations of choice. And I think very seldom does someone say, hey, they want to start their career and they want to go work for a staffing company or a recruiting company. That's not usually what they want to do. So I think as an industry, we have to think of ways to position ourselves where we're adding enough value to the employee where they say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity, this is a career opportunity for me because I can get better and advance my skills. The other thing I would say too on the engagement piece is I think that we need to make sure that we want to try to get discretionary effort out of people. And that's really kind of what the goal is to me when I think of engagements. How do you get discretionary effort out of people? And to your question about measuring, Albert Einstein had a really good quote, and he said something to the effect of not everything that counts can be measured, and not everything that measured can be counted. So I think that when you get into metrics and employee engagement, it's really tough to do that a lot of times. There are some things that you can do. There's some things that we're doing with Clearly Rated with evaluating net promoter scores from the people that we put on assignment, and that helps a lot. And we can actually break that down and look at individual attributes of how they're treated on the assignment and make decisions based on that information.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom. Travis,
Yes.
sorry about that. Thank you for that. And I agree. It sometimes is very difficult to assess, right, the effectiveness, but we absolutely do have to make sure whatever measures are being put in place, how do we assess the effectiveness of that, right? For example, what emerging trends or innovative strategies do you see in coming in the future, making sure that our contingent workforce is engaged and satisfied? Travis, to you again.
Yeah. So what do I need to do to make what are some innovative, the question is, what are some innovative trends that we see happening?
Yeah.
Well, I think right now, anytime you turn on the news and you watch CNBC, or if you watch the Wall Street Journal, I think one of the trends right now that all employers are thinking about is moving to a skill-based economy. And what skills do the employees need for the future? And so when I think about that, as I think about how can we be adding more value to the contingent workforce, and I think there's a lot of different things you can do there. I think number one, you can do things like training. So there's all kinds of online training that you can provide to your employees. But I think even more than that, I think creating a community of your contingent workers and letting them communicate with each other and learn from each other best practices, and facilitating perhaps some in-person events also work as well, because I believe, iron sharpens iron. And when you're in the same room as someone else, it's a lot easier to learn than it is, through a webinar or through a web-based training. But I think employees these days are looking for ways to advance their careers. And that's mostly through the acquisition of new skills and new talents.
Okay.
So
Beth,
Sonia, I'd like to
yeah.
leverage what Travis is saying, because when we're working with contingent workers, there's two sets of engagement we have to think about, right? Am I on the assignment and am I engaged with the assignment? Because like Travis said, my destination is that Home Depot, that UPS, that Coca-Cola. Am I part of the team there, right? Very simple engagement. Did I have a good onboarding process? Am I aligned to the company goals? Do I feel part of that company? Because if I don't, I'll do my work and I'll leave, right? And I'll be going back to Travis and saying, Travis, get me my next assignment. There's a second part of engagement we have in our industry, which is unique to us versus just an HR and in a corporate perm hiring world, is that as a supplier, am I engaging my talent? Am I becoming their destination of choice, right? And does that mean, are they getting the flexibility they need? Are they getting the skills development they need? So when you look at our top suppliers and we ask them this, what are the programs you're in place to develop your team, right? And what are those, as Travis said, how are you developing those skills? What are their career paths? Do they feel they have the right benefits, right? Because if they're not secure there, they're not going to be as secure in that corporate environment, and they'll also bounce around, right? So it's kind of a two-way street. We as suppliers have to engage our consultants, right, and make sure they stay with us. And because the one thing that's interesting in our industry is when you talk about and compare it to supply chains, is our supply has a choice. Our supply has a choice to participate or not, right? And so we want them participating at the client. The client wants them participating to get effective work product out of them. And we want them participating with us. So there's this bimodal engagement that we have to have. And the root of that means we have to get close to our consultants and what they need and align to their desires, both personal and professional, in terms of, are we getting them the right opportunities to succeed?
Yeah, Tom, you said something there that really resonated with me. You said our employees have a choice, and that's absolutely right. And so I think about the economy that we're in right now, and the shortage of labor, the shortage of talent across this country. And if our industry does not get this right, I have a feeling that everybody's going to be working direct for a direct employer rather than through contingent labor firms like ourselves. So I think that this is an imperative our industry has to get right, that we value people. And I think about the job of a recruiter. I foresee with technology that job will become easier on the sourcing end, and the relationship component of what that recruiter does every day is going to change. And so building the relationships with the candidate and becoming more of a career coach, a career advisor, a career consultant, as opposed to just someone that's trying to put a butt in the seat. And so I see the job changing over the next 10 years. You talked about the trends. That's one of the things I see happening.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just build on that a second, Travis, especially as it comes from healthcare. One of the bigger trends that we're seeing in the industry right now is cross-training, cross-skilling healthcare workers. 3 years ago, if you were an L&D nurse, you were an L&D nurse. Today, if you're an L&D nurse, but the census is down, we're going to call on the rest of your skills and maybe put you in a med surg or put you in an ER, as long as you have those skills. So that cross-training, upskilling, we see it in almost all of our healthcare contracts now, that all of our workers are required some level of floating. And again, it's a matter of where can our people be the most effective for the client? And now as a supplier, how do we leverage that? How do we maximize that? It used to be floating was frowned upon, that, this is what I do best. I don't want to do anything else. Now it's the job of the supplier, it's the job of the recruiter to encourage that cross-training, upskilling, and let these people know you are valuable in any capacity within the facility, not just a pigeonhole. And again, that very much falls to the supplier to communicate that and make that healthcare worker, or in any industry, make them feel appreciated, make them feel seen, and make sure that they understand the value that they bring to the organization, the destination, whether it's that Coca-Cola or wherever, that by being here and showing up, you add value. And it doesn't matter which role you're in, it's still required for the effective delivery of this organization.
Very true. Very true. So if I could go back to, what we were talking about, what are some emerging trends, right? How do we assess the effectiveness of this engagement process for every organization? And how do we keep our employees, engaged, right? Connected. Do you think redeployment can be one of the trends that can assess the effectiveness of this program? Do you think that's right thing to say? Tom?
I was just thinking there, okay, when we were talking about measures and effectiveness, I said,
Yeah.
it really boils down to one.
Mm.
Are we redeploying our contractors? Or are they extending on the assignments we're putting them in? And the company's coming to people like Travis and saying, I love Beth, keep her warm because I want her back right away, or I'm going to move her over to this assignment, right? Because that means Beth was engaged with the client. We're doing the right things to make sure Beth was prepared and engaged with the client. And is Beth coming back and saying, Travis, you're my man. Where am I going next? And here's what I want to do. I want to get down into the more of an AI path, or like Beth said, switch, help me with those acronyms, Beth. Emergency room nurse. I remember that, right?
Yeah.
Versus LT. So, that's the net. That's the net measure, right? We can go into all the soft measures, but at the end of the day, it's what's our redeployment capability and capacity.
Okay. So that's one of the measures for us to assess how effective we are.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I'll add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's exactly right. I think redeployment is something that we measure at TRC to make sure we're redeploying the contractors. It's good for a lot of different reasons. But I think that what I would try to make sure we do is in that process, I think you can't wait till the last minute till they're coming off an assignment. One of the things we try to measure is when do they want to know? Like, how do you get engaged with them while they're still working on an assignment and start talking about other opportunities that are coming up? And you have to do that early. And for me, it goes back to that, having that relationship with the employee that's on the job, that staffing employee, and you can't wait till the very end. And so we try to encourage our recruiters to make sure they have that relationship, whether they're doing lunches with a contractor on a periodic basis, checking in with them. We do a lot of pulse surveys. So, we'll pulse our workforce and just say, how's everything going, and get a response. And I would say that technology is helpful. You're able to do a lot of things through technology to check in on people and see how people are feeling about their position. But at the same time, it really comes down to that human interaction, that human relationship, because there's so much nuance that happens every single day in each one of their jobs and in each one of their lives. You can't get that just through texting or emailing, or really, quite frankly, you don't have the same relationship just being on a video call. You get it best through face-to-face interaction. And I realize that we live in a world where a lot of our people are working remote. So I think this has become even more challenging. So I think whatever we can do to try to create community and create relationships and facilitate introductions, even if we don't get anything out of it monetarily. I'll tell you, one of our recruiters recently was working with a candidate with really great skills, and we couldn't find a current client that we could redeploy this person to, but they knew someone that did not use staffing agencies to help them fill the job, and they just made the introduction anyway. Ended up being in a placement. And now there was no financial gain, but that's going to go a long way for that relationship. And we're all in business, obviously, to make money, but there's also the relational component of things where, if you do the right thing, things tend to pay off for you long term.
Absolutely.
I kind of like to jump in there just real quick on, redeployment has been an absolute focus for the last 5 years, at least, since I've been here. The most successful suppliers in our network have 40% or higher of their workforce redeployed. We are incredibly proactive with that. Of course, being healthcare focused, compliance, everything else takes on average 2 weeks. So we start reaching out to our suppliers 3 to 4 weeks before a candidate completes an assignment, encouraging them, reach out to this worker. They're coming off. Do they want to stay? Do they want to go someplace else? Where do they want to go? Here's our other opportunities. We want that engagement. And by offering this data and being really, really proactive with it, we have the ability to keep the quality talent in our network rather than going to other facilities outside of our network. But we're also encouraging that relationship building between the supplier and the worker. We're reaching out saying, if you haven't already, talk to this worker. Hey, what do they want to do next? They've done well for us. Where do they want to go? Here's what we have open in that area. We really try to strongly encourage keeping the talent as well as building those relationships from day one. And that's been very, very successful. The most successful suppliers that we see in our network right now have an average of 30 to 40% of their workforce just redeploys to their next assignment. They're taking that travel assignment, and rather than it being a one-off, they're taking traveling to becoming a career. They're creating the sense of purpose. They're creating the sense of engagement with their suppliers that can give them their next opportunity and their next opportunity. And you're creating that trust. Without trust, these contingent workers are just going to jump agency to agency.
Yes.
But creating that relationship and that trust is the baseline of how to keep your workforce engaged.
I totally agree. And that this is so refreshing to hear, right? That redeployment or engaging with the employees, it's happening at both ends. It's not just the supplier, but the program, right? The customer as well. So that's really refreshing to hear. Now, we understand, we have talked about the measures and how important it is to have engaged employees, but we all know that in this industry, we do face challenges, right? So I would like to ask you, what common hurdles do organizations encounter in building strong employee engagement, building strong connections, and what are the strategies that have proven effective in overcoming those challenges? Tom, if I could ask you to chime in.
So the challenge is, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in our clients, and it's really more of a client challenge, is when you're bringing in a temporary workforce, people want to be validated. They want to feel engaged, right? We're human beings. We live for validation. All the social platforms are based, and the success of them, on self-validation, right? It's the reason why we post things. People like it. Hey, I feel good. People don't like it. Whoops, we're not going to post that again, right? So how does that employee get engaged and validated and does not feel like just a temporary third party in the business? So I think one of the biggest challenges is the education of our clients to say, hey, this is your workforce, right? Hey, I don't know what the latest number is, but it's probably up past 50% of the workforce is or going to be very shortly temporary, contingent, project-based, right? And we have to educate our clients that this is the direction. And just because they're temporary does not mean they're secondary. So we have to include them. We have to show appreciation. We have to make sure they're getting fair compensation and benefits. Too many people are turning the knob to cut costs, right? Well, that impacts the talent in terms of compensation. Do they have a great work environment? Are they part of the team? Are they part of the activities of the organization, right? And are treated fairly, equivalently, just like the employee. So one of the biggest challenges is, to me, going back to your question, Sonia, educating our clients, our customers, the enterprise, the small business, that just because it's temporary labor doesn't mean we turn off all those activities we do to engage our permanent employees, right? We've recognized this a long time ago in HR for the perm. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter how that person, right, is being employed, perm or temp. Those same things come by. Because if you don't, then you're going to have a flipping workforce. You won't get consistency. You won't get growth. You won't get value. You're going to invest all this IP in that person. You're going to get them up to date in the systems. It takes them about a month to get going. You'll lose all that, and they'll flip back out to the next person, right? That cost of the IP I develop in a contractor is worth more than any cost-saving measure you can tell me, right? So I'd actually say, look, redeployments to me should be a higher bill rate, right? Because these are great people. Too much they want to do, tenure type discounts, right? Well, the reality is there should be 10-year increases because you're getting great value out of that person. That's a different topic for a different day. We could have many beers on that. But the point is, the challenge you're saying is educating our customers not to treat these as a temporary workforce. This is excuse me, the right verb there, the people you need to get your jobs done, and you got to treat them just like you do the perm side.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I think when I hear that word, I cringe a little bit because, companies want people that are going to be there for the long term, then they refer to them as temps. That really seems a little contradictory to me. LinkedIn did a survey. I just read it last week. It was in the Wall Street Journal. LinkedIn did a survey of what they anticipate. They had gone and asked employees, how likely are you to be in your job for the next 3 months? And 90% said they would. 90%. This is perm people too. 90% said they would consider other opportunities. That is an astonishing number, and I couldn't even believe it. But I think about that, and I'm thinking, are we heading to another Great Resignation or another turnover tsunami? And I think we very likely could be. And so I think this is a very timely conversation, because I think as the job market begins to recover, and it is slow, and probably most of the tech side of the business and most corporate and healthcare has certainly slowed down since the ramp up of COVID. I think as we're paying attention to this stuff. And one very practical thing that I think can be done is I go back to that idea of a career coach or a talent manager for your contingent workers. And that would be an investment on most staffing companies to have to do that. But I think it would be really important, because what happens in most world is most of the recruiters and most of your account managers are driven by commissions. They're on to the next deal. So once they've made a placement, they're incented to go make another placement. And they're not necessarily incented to take care of that contractor that they've already placed on the job. And so we have a client that we work with, and we placed a career coach with them. And so what this person does is they go and they sit down once a month with our employee, and they say, how's the position going? Are you happy with the job? And then they share that and look for areas of maybe they feel like there's gaps in their skills or experience that they maybe feel like they need training. And then this career coach will go consult with the client and talk to them about where this employee is at and what they're thinking. And a lot of times what will happen is we'll go back in and we'll say, hey, we feel like this training is going to be beneficial for this person. We'll develop that person to learn a new skill. We'll show how that training is benefiting the customer. Maybe they're getting more productivity out of that employee. And then we'll go back to the customer and say, hey, you know what? This person has learned this new skill. They're more valuable to you. We would like to pay them a little bit more. And we need to raise your bill rate a little bit. And most of the time we do that, our customers aren't biting back on that. They're saying, absolutely, we're thankful that you're doing this, because they want to retain the worker. They don't want to lose that knowledge and that experience.
It's
and I want to just
go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry, Tom. I was going to say, Travis, that's absolutely aligned with what we're seeing in healthcare right now. When there's a good, solid practitioner, organizations want to keep them, and they are willing to do what they need to do to keep them, whether it's a slight bill rate or whether it's an additional training. Everything that you just mentioned absolutely applies to healthcare across the board.
Tom, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was Travis. I think we probably read the same LinkedIn thing in prep for this. So there's some other interesting things. It says, why do people stay in the jobs and why do people leave jobs? Right?
Yeah.
And it's not compensation. Don't get me wrong. That's in the top 5. But the top 2 is the work I'm doing focused, rewarding, and engaging, right? And I know where that fits into the business, and I know that what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, right, and how it ties to a bigger picture. That was number 1, and then the number 2 was career development, right? I stay because of that, and I go because lack of that. It was interesting. Number 3 on going was compensation, but in staying, compensation was actually fairly far down the pecking order. So when you look at what people want, they want to make sure they're part of a team, they're contributing rewarding work in a great environment, and they have a career future. We all recognize that now things are moving so fast. We've got to continue to develop ourselves. And am I getting that? Because if I'm not, I will go somewhere else to find that. It's natural. And so what Travis is saying is brilliant. And I would encourage all staffing firms to really be thinking like that, because we've kind of come a full circle, right? If you look back before VMSs and MSPs, we were about relationships. We had a database, right? We kept that database. We were and we cultivated it and we nurtured it. Then we got into a numbers game. We got into the internet and we realized I can get talent all over the place. Well, we're coming back around, right? We're out of this numbers game now. We've got to go back in a nice blend between the two of where we are, right? And specifically in healthcare, that's going to be very important because it's such a limited world. We know all the nurses, right? So you've got to really focus on that.
Yeah. I would like to bring one challenge here, which is probably more from the technology side of contingent workforce than healthcare, Beth. That contingent workers, we hear it from the suppliers all the time, that contingent workers tend to sometimes associate more with the customer than the employer. How do we change that perception? What do we do to ensure that employee understands that, I am representing my employer to the customer side, right? The value that I am bringing to the customer is for my employer. And what do suppliers do in order to incentivize those employees, right? And how do we cultivate that behavior or that thought process? I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. Anybody?
I'll start. I'll start
I'm
that.
going to put Travis on the spot because I'm very interested on the supplier side.
Let's put Travis on the
I'll
spot.
start.
Yeah.
So, what I was thinking was, I think that's a very
It's a great
important question. How do we change that perception? And I think it's tricky because if you think about this, if you're a contingent worker, you're working at a client site all day long, and you're around their permanent workforce. But I will say I will give a lot of credit to consulting firms. Consulting firms do very good at this. If you work for one of the big four, Deloitte, Accenture, PwC, you feel like one of their employees,
Mhm.
even if you're deployed at a client site. And how do they do it? Well, they report into a person that's a partner at one of those particular firms, but they also get them engaged in other things. They make sure that they're focused on the stuff that we're talking about, like with professional development and coaching and teaching the employee, and they're getting them involved in a community. It's more than just, hey, we're sending you to this and we're never going to talk to you again. They're engaged with them. They have the relationship with them. And so I think that's one of the things that staffing companies in particular are lacking a little bit is we tend to, or they have in the past, tend to place somebody and then they forget them because they're on to the next deal. They're worrying about the next placement because our business is contingent and we're always thinking about what's going to come next. So great question.
Thank you.
I'd really like to jump in here, even though it wasn't healthcare specific. I absolutely agree with Travis. We utilize the destination organizations for some of our products, things like direct sourcing, leveraging the client's brand, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that worker needs to be really, really proud that they are representing that supplier. And to that end, suppliers really need to look at their own branding and creating that reputation, that brand in the industry, that they're ethical, they're upstanding, they're respectable, they create relationships. Social media has done a great job of doing that. But what you see for a lot of these supplier social media is you see their internal core staff. I'm seeing more and more suppliers on social media now highlighting and acknowledging their contingent workers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the end of the day, it's those contingent workers that are creating my paycheck. They're actually the superstars. The internal, that's more, yes, we are the backbone and we make it happen, but none of us would have a job without those contingent workers. So really highlighting and celebrating those workers as our staff, I think is a huge shift that we're going to be seeing more and more.
That's a very, very valid observation, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. So we have talked about challenges. We have talked about strategies, in general, how to overcome those challenges. Now, I would like to ask each one of you if you could share some insights into these engagement strategies or processes that your organization has implemented? And also, what has led to enhanced alignment and mutual benefits in your organization? Beth, if you would like to start.
As far as programming, I can tell you that we are very, very plugged in and very engaged with our supplier base.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a lot of shift, very much like Tom said earlier. It had become very transactional, and shifting that back to in-person meetings, conversations, relationships. I think that's one of the biggest shifts that we're seeing across the industry right now, is those relationships are really the focus, and building those relationships with the workers, with the suppliers, with the client, all across the board. And that goes hand in hand with your branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the keys that we're seeing to our success, is we are creating that image in the industry of having that open door, being willing to have the conversation. I'm not asking you to send me an email. I'm asking you to pick up the phone. And I think that's one of the big things that's been one of the strongest tools in our toolbox.
Gotcha.
I agree with that, picking up the phone part. And, you asked for the strategies we're using. One thing that we've done here, so just to give you an idea, we have about 150 recruiters that work for us. And one of the things we recently did was we have everyone in the entire company going through relationship training. And that sounds like that's relationship training. That seems real simple and it's like, frou-frou, but it's really not. And the people that have gone through the training have given us a lot of feedback on how much they've learned and how they've rethought their jobs. And some of the things we're talking about in that training is how do you build rapport with people? How do you handle a difficult conversation? Because what we found is that as we've hired more people from the younger generation, they don't have the same relationship skills that people that maybe are in Gen X or baby boomers may have had, because they're used to being on the phone and texting on the phone. And again, I'll go back to a point I made earlier, is it's very difficult to build a relationship with somebody when you're just simply sending them either an email message or a text message. You have to be engaged with them. The best is obviously face-to-face, but if you're not able to do that, a video chat or a phone conversation is next. And there's so much context that gets lost if you're not picking up the phone and talking to somebody and really trying to understand the nuance of whatever is on their mind. You're probably not going to be as successful. And I think that relationship piece is so critical. One of the other things that we've done too, which I think some of y'all might find this interesting, is we're using ChatGPT. We've built out role playing so that our recruiters can interact with a recruiter through ChatGPT. So we built out this GPT. So recruiter would go in and they would have an interaction with the automation, and it's a live conversation, and that helps the recruiters improve their communication skills because we found communication skills are lacking a little bit, and that's been very helpful for us.
Awesome. Tom?
Yeah, to me, it's about, the pillars, and that's validation, engagement, and focus and alignment. Mm-hmm. So as Travis was saying, from a validation, it's appreciation, seeking feedback, human connection, right? And it's true, this new generation, I've got 3 boys in their 20s. They live off text. And I kind of get frustrated because I keep saying, hey, I left you a voicemail. And they're like, Dad, I don't check voicemails. Right? Well, you missed half the story. But we have to get back to that. We're in the people business, and we have to really connect upon those 3 pillars in different ways. And if we focus on that, right, if we make sure our talent understands the clear objectives, they have great onboarding processes, it shows in the customer too. I can tell you, when we get people on assignments and our clients and they're unprepared coming in, undefined, then I can take a company like TRC where it's, they're on an assignment, right? They're part of TRC. They have the TRC values, the TRC brand. It's a night and day difference in the productivity of those contractors that are on the assignments in that versus someone who's just filling and billing. So it goes back to those three pillars. We have to make sure our consultants are validated. They feel part of the team. They're engaged. They're engaged at the client. And we have to work that balancing act, right?
Yeah, completely agree. Now, before we move to Q&A, I want to come back. Today's
This is the part that you scare me with, Sonia.
Oh, come on.
I want to hold you responsible for something you said earlier.
I'm going to be very easy, Tom. Trust me, I will. So I'm just going to come back to, why did we do this? Why are we doing this session today, right?
Yeah.
That how critical it is to have those meaningful relationship with our contingent workforce, right? How important it is to any organization's success to have an employee that is meaningfully engaged. So I just want, Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot this time. Start with you. If you could just, take a minute and redefine, re-emphasize how important employee engagement is and what is that we all got to be doing.
It's imperative, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the workforce. It is our product that we're in the market with. It is we will lose our customers.
Yeah.
Because the talent will leave if they're not engaged. They will leave us. They will leave the client. The client will leave us, right? And we'll be out of business. It's no longer a numbers game, right? We need to develop our talent. We need to make them through a variety of different things. Travis had some great suggestions through engaged in a career pathing place where they feel part of, I'm going to use Travis's company, TRC, as the example. They're growing with us. They're on assignments, but as part of that team. And when they have that and they're rewarded and compensated fairly, right? We don't have to have the highest compensation, but they're compensated fairly. They see a future and they're validated, right? They're credited for their efforts. They have a home and they will stay.
Perfect.
When you don't have a home, you're transient and you'll have a transient workforce and thousands of measures of productivity on the ineffectiveness of that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Travis?
Yeah. So what I was thinking about is I started in the business back in the 1900s. I started my career with a large national company, Aerotech. And I still remember my first day in the business. My manager said to me, hey, this business is all about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's still true today. And I think it's still going to be true 20 years from now, is this business is all about relationships. And, we talk about something here at TRC. It's called the service profit chain. And I think it perfectly kind of sums up what we're all talking about today. But it comes from the Harvard Business Review, and it was made famous by Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines back in the 1990s. But basically what it said employee satisfaction really drives customer satisfaction. And so that it meant if you take really good care of your employees, you gave them good work environment, great manager to work for, training and development, invested in them, that they're going to be happier in their jobs. And if they're happy in their jobs, the customer is going to feel that. And in our case, our customer, our employees are our staffing employees, but if they're happier in their jobs, they become more productive for our clients and they have more success as a result. And that, to me, that's kind of what it's all about, is just investing in people and investing in relationships, because that's really what the business is all about.
Completely agree. Beth?
I guess I have a slightly different perspective here. I look at, those of us on the call, we are direct permanent employees. Why do we go to work every day? We go to work because we have goals, because we have aspirations. We're looking for, as Tom said, validation. We're looking for promotions, for raises. We're trying to earn those things. Okay, how does that translate to your contingent workforce? You're temporary. You're at a client in healthcare. The standard is about 13 weeks. And then you're going to go on to another 13 weeks, whether it's at the same client or another. But there's not really an opportunity for promotion. There's not really an opportunity for advancement. So as their chosen career partner, which is how I look to a supplier, it's up to you to create that training opportunity, that advancement opportunity, that incentive, the validation that's going to make your contingent workers go from, I'm just doing this as a stopgap till I find my next full-time role, to I have a career, and I do this as my career as a traveler. I am growing my career. I am finding fulfillment. I'm finding advancement. But they can only do that in partnership, which is the absolute key to all of this, but in partnership with their suppliers, as long as their suppliers have good partnerships with clients. So it's very much a full circle to me.
Very, very valid point, Beth. Thank you so much. So now is the time before we move to Q&A. Any insights that you would like to share from your organization? Any new happening, anything that you would want to share with the audience? All good? All right. Okay. So there is this question I see here that as we discuss so much ownership on a supplier, how do we provide the resources and tools to our contractors as we reduce our margins? And how do we keep our employees engaged? Travis, Tom, I'm putting him on
I
spot.
get the hard question first. So, look, I'll go back. I said earlier, we're all in business to make a profit. I think that's absolutely true. I think sometimes it's a little bit chicken and egg. Sometimes you have to make the investment before you get a return on it. I think one thing that when I was actively selling this business, I was always like, how do I sound different than my past competitors? And I think that doing things like this will make you stand out. And, so that's kind of my personal take on it. How do we keep our employees engaged, loyal? Again, I think it goes back to a lot of what we've already talked about, but I think redeployment is huge. Being able to get people reassigned to new jobs or new assignments, training and development, anything we can do to continue to build that relationship and make sure that they're happy on their assignment is going to help with loyalty.
Thank you. Any of you, Beth, Tom, would like to chime in?
Actually, I'd love to chime in on this one. I advise suppliers on this all the time, because we all know the highest cost to a staffing supplier is talent acquisition. Mm-hmm. So what can you do? And the things that you do don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money. To really, really encourage redeployment, I often will advise suppliers to create an incentive program. Every completed assignment, have your worker earn 4 points. When they've got 10 points, they can go to this website. Very much the contingent workforce are parents, their mothers, their fathers. And if you give them a cash bonus, they're going to take it home and spend it on their kid and it's gone. If you give them an incentive program where the things they have available are for them, every time they put that on, whether it's a free set of scrubs or a pair of nursing shoes, every time they put that on, they're going to think, I didn't pay for these. My supplier, my employer paid for these because they value me. You're creating that relationship. You're reinforcing that value proposition and that loyalty. Everything you do doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's the little things that oftentimes mean a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's more about the gesture, right? Being there than spending top dollars.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Vidya, on that last question, is leveraging what Travis said. What's your cost of sourcing new versus redeploying existing? I will argue that redeployment cost is much less than trying to find somebody new, right? And you've invested in that person. You will lose that investment you've made in that person and that knowledge base. So yeah, I get it. We're getting beat down by customers to turn the knob and reduce the margins. But I've been in margin discussions with customers and trying to understand that on grand scale and small scale. And when you break out that margin and say, look, I'm investing 3% or whatever that percentage is, and have that transparency to the customer in developing our talent, right, for redeployment into it. There's not one customer who says, yeah, scratch that, we want the number lower. We understand why that value is there. So 2 points. sourcing is more expensive than redeployment. And two, with transparency on how you're reinvesting your dollars and add margin into it. And people won't scratch that off because everybody recognizes the value.
Great. We have our second question here. How do you create this sense of community when you are not seeing people in person or necessarily working on the same project? What areas do you see as opportunities for alignment? Tom, you are on the spot.
Yeah, I wrestle with this because it's not just in this world, it's in any world, right? I got a team globally.
Yeah.
First, finding a time we all can meet. And we learned a lot out of COVID out of this, right? How do you build teamworks and a sense of team and alignment when we're all working at home and things? And we have to take those lessons and apply them into business. We have to first spend the time, commit the time to get together, and then get together not just to hear the corporate presentation or the update, but literally we just got off on my team. We got all together and did what was it's called True Colors. It's an hour-long project assessment. It was fun. I got to know everybody better, and we had a round table. We play games. We do lunches. DoorDash, everybody gets a coupon. We DoorDash together and just say, all right, we're taking an hour at a time to get to know each other and build that team of camaraderie. We have to practice the lessons. First, you got to make the investment. Two, practice the lessons because we all are remote. We're all on assignments to step away, become part of the team, use the lessons we learned in COVID, working remotely, right? There's good practices out there, good tools out there, good solutions out there, and make people feel part of the team. It's not that rocket science.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's things. I think the question was, how do you get it when people are working in different departments and different areas? And I think even doing things like this, finding what people have in common, because
Right.
there's something the entire workforce has in common, and that's they're all working. So there are things that people can do. You can do training on how to advance your career. You can do simple things on. We did one recently for contingent workers on disc profile. We gave them, people who want to participate, did disc profile, brought in a speaker, had people talk through that, so people understood, what the personality types and temperament types.
Mhm.
And so there's little things you can do that don't necessarily cost a lot of money that you can do to bring people together.
Absolutely.
But leveraging what Travis said, the commitment you've got to make is that commitment to bring people together, and you can do that remotely. All right.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things that I've seen is, you guys both brought up valid points of training opportunities and growth opportunities. I think there's also a place in that life cycle for just getting together for a conversation, whether it's a coffee hour or I see a lot of online virtual happy hours.
Yes.
Where, okay, we're done. You know what? Let's grab a glass of wine. Let's just chat. What's going on in your life? How's the weather been? How's your garden going? But finding that commonality and feeling that connection with the people that you're in a group with, whatever that group is, but finding that space that, when I think of Travis now, I'm going to think of that great view out of his office. That's something I aspire to at some point. But it's when I think of Travis, that's going to make you that much more human in my eyes. And I think that you don't always need the speaker. You don't always need the topic. I think there's a lot of value in let's just get together and be real.
Okay. Guess we have our next question. So the question is, they think another piece is important candidate engagement during the hiring process. Suppliers often cannot provide any feedback on the resume submitted via MSP or VMS, as they do not receive any feedback on resumes submitted through MSPs. So what should we do to solve this challenge?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Raul, and respect that. I sometimes call it the black hole. So from a product perspective, I can tell you what we're doing here at Magnit, and that is, as we continue to invest in technology, provide a much more immediate responsive feedback loop, right, about the status of your candidate, where that is. The second thing is suppliers, you have a right, and I'm surprised how many suppliers do not exercise this right, to sit down with the program, right, and say, okay, I've want to get, I'm not getting the hires. What's going on? I'm submitting great candidates. Am I misinterpreting, right, the intake calls? Do I need to be, right? So contact your program manager, ask for the time to sit down with them and go ahead and say, I need to understand more. I need better feedback. I'm supporting you as a program. You're the customer as much as the client. And so exercise your right to talk with the programs to get that feedback. So net, I think the industry all is investing in this. It's a great point. I know at least we see it as a challenge. We're looking at different ways to use technology, both with AI also in some of these and opening up better feedback loops, but to also be proactive and request that feedback on a regular basis. Because if we can get you better, everybody's better, right? We don't make money if you guys don't staff as an MSP VMS. Client doesn't get their talent. You don't get the placement. So let's getting feedback is important.
Good point.
I'd really like to expand on that just a little bit. Be specific in your questions. When we as an MSP get, well, I'm submitting a ton of candidates and nobody's making it through. Okay, give me very, very specific profiles. Tell me what rec you submitted them to. Give me the last 10. Let me review this and let me tell you, well, on this one, it was your time to submit. I already had 25 candidates when you submitted them. Or on this one, you were missing this specific certification. Make sure that when you're asking those questions, you give me enough that I can actually give you an answer. But at the same time, please don't ask for feedback on every single candidate. Yes. Because that's just not realistic. If it's a larger global issue you're seeing, I'm submitting a ton of candidates, they're not getting rejected, what's going on? Then come back to me with specifics and let's take a look. But there's a fine line there of, yes, you need feedback, but I need data and details in order to be able to give you that feedback as well.
Great point.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Okay. Do you think Gen Z is more or less open than other generations to taking contingent work?
I'll go first if you want me to.
Always.
Yeah. so interestingly enough, I read an article yesterday that said the unemployment rate for Gen Z is 12%, which is, it's like 4% for everybody else, 4% or less. So it's amazing that really a lot of the recent college graduates that are trying to enter a profession, white collar work especially, are having a very difficult time finding employment. So I think this is a great opportunity for our industry just in general to reach out to those candidates and try to place them and work with them throughout their career, not just placing them in a job. But I do think I personally think they should be more open because there's a lot of them looking for work right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely I'm on a much more open. When you look at the way they work, right, they're impulsive, immediate feedback, right, texting, right. If I don't have my answer, I'm moving on. And I forgot about what I asked about already. So they're project based, right? They're not interested in long company careers. I want to make enough money to get here, and then I might take 3 weeks vacation or go off for the summer. Then I'm going to go here and develop my skills there, right? So you're talking about a generation that's going to have, they're looking at themselves and saying, I can't afford a mortgage, but then again, why would I want one? I look at my parents, how it saddled them down, right? I want to do all this great stuff in life. I want to be fluid. I want to go out there and enjoy life and live life at the moment. The way they live, they act and breathe is project based. So the way their work is going to align to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So it culminates our Q&A session. Great insights. I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom, Travis, Beth, for your invaluable time and insights as to how do we engage with contingent workforce. Great. Back to you, Richa.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and Sonia and Richard, thanks for putting this together. Just by as Travis said, the amount of attendees, great topic, and I know you guys put a lot of time and energy
Thank
and
you.
investment into this. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was all worth it. What an amazing session. It was fun and a fun session as well. It was, yeah, it was such a pleasure to have all of you on the session. Thank you so much for joining. We will all see you all in our next webinar. We are hosting on 18 July, in which we will talk about the impact of AI in the future work. RSVP as soon as you can. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.